Hello friends. So today we are going to start with a new unit, that is sensor materials and technologies. So we have seen in our previous lectures, in continuation with that we are going to study today the sensor materials and technologies. So in previous lectures we have seen the principles of sensors, then we have seen what are the interfacing circuits that can be used for sensors, then we have seen the different sensors in different applications, and now we are going to focus on the few sensor materials and the technologies that can be used to manufacture the sensors. So our focus will be on the most commonly used technologies and the few materials that are used for the sensors. So here we go. The focus will be, or the contents of such lectures will be the materials, then the surface processing technology and the nanotechnology. So in this lecture I'm going to focus on the materials. So we know that whenever we are manufacturing the particular sensor, there are n number of metals are available, or n number of methods are available, and you require a particular design. For that purpose, again the fabrication methodologies are there. Then how to select a particular material, that is also decided depending on the characteristics, depending on the applications. So these process consist a material like semiconductors, optical components, metals, ceramics and plastics. So our focus will be on such kind of properties or such kind of materials which will exhibit the principles of sensors, and that can be used as a sensing element or for other type of for coating the material or coating the sensing element. So these elements are, or these components are used, materials are used for that purpose. So silicon is one of the important material that can be used as a sensing material. So we know that in this universe the silicon is present in sun, stars, and it is the most important component of the class of meteorites which is known as aerolites. So these aerolites, and if you consider our earth, on that earth also the whole weight of this earth crust, the silicon will weigh near about 25.7% of the total earth crust. So this is this is what the silicon is abundantly present in the earth, and that's why we are using that material as a semiconductor material, and we are working with that one. So silicon is not found free in nature. So whatever may be that is available, that is called as a silica, that is nothing but SiO2 oxide layer type of structure. So that's or silicates. So it is in the form of oxides or silicates. So the best example is sand. So sand is the form of one kind of this silicon which can be used to extract a pure silicon from the sand. So this is the best example I can give it to you as a. So some of the oxides that are sand, quartz, then rock crystals, clay, mica. So these are the oxides that are available freely in the environment, and silicon is prepared by heating the silica and carbon in electric furnace with using the carbon electrodes, and we can extract the pure silicon in the format of rod. So crystalline silicon is a metallic luster, and it looks like a grayish in color. So when we extract it, it looks like a metallic luster, and it looks like a metal, and it is grayish in color. So generally I'm not able to pronounce it. Djochar-Slee process is commonly used to extract this single crystal silicon from the solid state semiconductor or micro machine sensors. Now the silicon is an inert element. Initially it is not going to react with any kind of element. So it is an inert element susceptible to the halogen and alkali, and it is resistant to the most of the acids except hydrofluoric acid. So essentially the silicon transmits the infrared radiation and is commonly used as a window in infrared sensors. So we know that it is generally used in infrared sensors. So silicon atomic weight, here I am going to talk about its atomic or chemical structure. So its atomic weight is 28.08, its atomic number is 14, then melting point is near about 1410 degree centigrade, boiling point is 23 degree centigrade, and a specific gravity is at 25 degree centigrade is 2.33 and valence is 4. So I think there is something point is missing in boiling point, because melting point is 1410, then boiling point will be obviously higher than that. So it should be 1423 degree centigrade, you might consider it. Okay, so its valence is 4. Valence is 4 means in an outer boundary, in an outer orbit, it contains only 4 electrons. It contains only 4 electrons. So the combination will be like that one. So you can see that this is how you will see it in the table of your chemical composition table that you will be getting for various materials or metals. So you can see such kind of square which consists a symbol Si, then its crystal structure is shown to you, then physical state is shown to you, atomic number is shown to you, then its atomic number is known to you. So this is how we can see it in a chemical chart that is available to you. So this is how the structure is and how it will become an inert gas. So the 4 electrons will combine with the neighboring 4 electrons, neighboring 4 atoms or neighboring 4 silicon molecules, and they will form a crystalline structure like this one. So the Si will look like this one. So the structure of Si will look like this one. So this is covalent bond between the 2 neighboring atoms, or one silicon with 4 neighboring atoms. It will try to satisfy its outer valence bar, outer orbit with a 4 neighboring electrons, and the outermost orbit will have 4 its own and 1 from each from the neighboring ones. So the valence will be finally you will get 8 and it will become an inert gas, or sorry, inert element, because its outermost orbit is fulfilled. So silicon is silicon exhibits a number of physical effects which is quite useful for the sensor applications. So we know that silicon is, as it is a semiconductor, so it will exhibit the piezoresistive type of application, or the piezoresistive type of property which can be used for measurement of sensor application. So what kind of application you will be using, where you can use for various stimuli. So it can be used for a radiant, mechanical, thermal and magnetic, as well as chemical. So for radiant, I'll give you the example of photovoltaic effect, then photoelectric effect, photoconductivity, photomagneto-electric effect, mechanical piezoresistivity, lateral piezoelectric effect, lateral photovoltaic effect, thermal Seebeck effect, temperature dependence. So we have already seen, we have already discussed in previous units or previous lectures that in many of the applications the silicon is used as a base material for manufacturing the generally micro type of sensors or thin sensors. So silicon does not possess the piezoelectric effect. Piezoelectric effect means you apply the voltage and it vibrates, and you apply the vibration, it will generate a voltage. That is called as a piezoelectric effect. So that effect is not observed in silicon, but piezoresistivity is possible. So the major problem with the silicon is that it limits to the many stimuli and shows that it is very sensitive to the temperature. So silicon itself exhibits a very useful mechanical properties which are currently widely used for manufacturing the devices such as pressure transducer, temperature sensor, force tactile detectors by employing the MEMS technology, micro electromechanical sensors, that is called as the MEMS technologies. So the thin films and photolithic fabrication process makes possible to realize a great variety of extremely small high precision devices which are developed for the electronic circuits. So with the help of these technologies, photoelectron lithographic fabrication, so we know that whatever may be the chips you are getting, electronic chips, ICs, we call it as ICs. These ICs are made up of these type of technology, and with the help of this silicon technology, so which uses the photolithography fabrication methodology, and there are many many other techniques are also there. So the photolithography is a major technique that can be used for manufacturing such kind of devices. So high volume batch fabrication, as I told you, VLSI, LSI chips you are manufacturing, integrated circuits you are manufacturing with the help of such kind of techniques. So it allows you to manufacture. So single crystal silicon is a brittle material, and its Young's modulus is 1.9 into 10 raised to 12. So if you consider a single crystal silicon, then it is a brittle material, and its Young's constant is 1.9 into 10 raised to 12. So structural and mechanical disadvantage of SCS is, SCS means single crystal silicon, can be overcome by depositing a thin film that is called as a sputtered quartz. How to have such kind of film on the surface, we will see in few slides. So we can overcome such kind of disadvantage by giving the strength with the help of some deposition of the thin film on the surface of the silicon. So there are certain techniques which is called as anisotropic etching, is the key technology for micro machining of the miniature three-dimensional structure in silicon. So if you want to have such kind of structures in silicon, you will be using anisotropic type of etching, which will use KOH type of material, that is potassium hydroxide type of material, for manufacturing such kind of devices or etching element. So we will see it in next lectures. So you just try to understand how this process will take place with the help of certain diagrams. I am going to explain it very soon. So here the example is given to you that the etching elements are used that are based on ethylamidine and a water with some additive, and other consist of purely inorganic alkaline solutions like KOH, NaOH and lithium OH. Potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide and lithium hydroxide type of material you will be using as a alkaline material, which can be used for the etching purpose, and others are ethylamine type of material which can be used with the water as a for etching purpose, but mostly used are KOH, and it is widely used because it gives you a very accurate type of etching. So polysilicon is the material which allows you to develop the sensor with a unique characteristics. So polysilicon layers which is of the order of 0.5 micrometer may be formed by vacuum deposition onto oxide silicon wafer with an oxide thickness of near about 0.1 micrometer. So polysilicon structure are developed with the boron by technique known as a semiconductor in a semiconductor industry. It is known as LPCVD, that is low pressure chemical vapor deposition. So what are these techniques, we will see soon. So you are doping the boron on the semiconductor material, and that will form a polysilicon structure. So this resistivity of this PS layer, that is polysilicon layer, is always higher than that SCS type of material. then the resistance change of PS with the temperature is not linear. So here you can see that whenever you are adding certain impurities or layer to a particular structure, silicon structure, so you can see that if you are having a single crystalline silicon over here, then the line will be like this, and if you add certain impurities to that one or layer to that one, the resistivity will improve. Okay, so the characteristics are going to change. So the temperature coefficient of the resistance increases with the decreased doping concentration. So here you can see that the temperature coefficient is also changing with respect to doping concentration. As you goes on increasing the concentration, then temperature, as you goes on increasing, the temperature coefficient increases with the decreased in doping concentration. So you can see that the doping concentration is changed. So here the doping concentration is 2 into 10 raised to 14. Here it is 8 into 10 raised to 14. Here it is 1 into 10 raised to 16. So you can see that the characteristics is changing. The characteristics is changing. So the resistance at any given point of the temperature layer you can easily calculate with the help of such characteristics, and that will be given by RT into R20. R20 means it is measured at 20 degrees centigrade. So this is the point where it is known as. So this point is known to everyone. So this R20 is known to you. Then e raised to alpha R into T minus T0. So you can easily calculate the resistance at any point. Then at a specific doping concentration, the resistance has become insensitive to the temperature variation, and that point is known as point Z. So here you can see that after this doping concentration, the temperature, it becomes temperature insensitive. So the resistance is insensitive to the temperature variation, and it remains almost constant. So I will call this point as a Z point. So here your resistance is insensitive to your temperature variation. So the strain sensitivity of the PS resistor is expressed through the gauge factor, and here you can see that you can express it. So when you give the whenever you are designing silicon as a material for a strain gauge, then in that case when you are applying, since it is having Young's modulus, so when you are apply the tension and the compression, so you can see that the change in resistance you can easily observe, and when you are going to change the doping also, so that doping will also create the change in the characteristics related to the resistance. So this is how the doping in silicon will change the resistance characteristics with respect to resistance as well as with respect to temperature also. It will give you the characteristics that are associated with one. So doping is very important for the silicon. Okay. So next one is the plastic. So plastic is also used for the sensor development or the sensor fabrications. So let us try to understand what do you mean by plastic. So plastic is a synthetic material made up from the chemical raw materials called as a monomers. So from monomers you are manufacturing the plastics. So a monomer, it is one chemical unit such as ethylene is reacted with other monomer molecule to form a long chain of repeating ethylene units forming a polymer polyethylene. So one monomer is reacting with another monomer, so then it will form a chain of ethylenes, and that ethylene will form a polymer polyethylene type of structure, and that we will call it as a plastic. Okay. So polymer consists of carbon atoms in combination with other elements. So when you add the carbon atoms to the with another elements or another monomers, then it will form a polymer. So only 8 elements are used to create thousands of different plastics. That means only 8 elements are used in different combinations to form a different kinds of plastics. So these elements are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, silicon, sulfur and chlorine. So when you combine it, or when all these elements react with each other in such a way that then it will form a plastic type of material. So combining these elements in various ways, it will produce extremely large and complex molecules which will form the different polymers, and you will get a plastics. So here is the structure of energy bonds is also given, and its valence is also given. So you can see that here valence is also given. So here you can see that H is having only one valency, atomic weight is 1. Carbon atomic weight is given, so atomic weight and valency you can see that. Carbon it is having 12, so valency is 4. Nitrogen 14, valency is 3. That means it requires only 3 electrons to become inert. Oxygen is 16, having 2, so most of the time that is why it is called as a H2O. Only one molecule of oxygen and 2 molecules of hydrogen, that will form a water molecule. So that is called as a H2O. This is how the combination takes place. Then fluorine has having only 1, silicon is having 4, 28 is the number, sulfur is having 32, then it is number is valence is 2, chlorine is having 35 atomic weight and its valence is 1. So this is how the valencies are defined, and from the atomic weight, and the energy bonds are shown like this one. So each atom has a limited capacity for joining with the other atoms, and every atom within the molecules must have all of its energy bonds satisfied if the compound is to be stable. So that if you want to make the material stable or a molecule stable after the combining with each other, then the outermost orbit must be satisfied, then and then only your compound will become stable. So HH and HF are the stable because they are satisfying with each other, 1 1, so they will combine with each other. So whereas CH and SCl are not. Why? Because their valency is different. So let us consider the monomer. So here it is the structure of monomer. So carbon requires 4, and H requires only 1. So H requires only 1. So 2 with this one, 2 with another carbon, and 2 with this one. So you will get the ethylene type of structure. Such kind of propylene also you are getting. Now you can see that 3H and CH3 combination. So such kind of structure will give you the propellant type of structure or propylene monomer. Then tetrafluoroethylene, you will be getting 4 fluorine with 2 carbon components. So that will give you the tetra means 4, tetrafluoroethylene, so that will give you the 4 combinations, and that will lead to the polymers. So these structures will lead to polymers. So how will they lead to polymers? You can see that. So when you combine it with one, now here CC is taking one, but this molecule is again having the length, or it will combine with the next monomer. The next monomer is again a C, then H type of structure. So that will again with, and that will form a chain. So that's why it is called as a polymer. So it will form a ethylene polymer. This will that will be called as a polyethylene. This will be called as a propylene, that is called as a polypropylene. This will be called as a tetrafluoroethylene, that will be called as a polytetrafluoroethylene. So this is how the structure is formed for the any polymer when you are going for a plastic type of material. So polyethylene, being is the simplest polymer, has many useful properties in a sensor technology. So polyethylene is reasonably transparent, and it is used in a mid and infrared spectral ranges, and used for fabrication for infrared window and lenses. By applying the heat, pressure and catalyst, the monomers are grown into long chains, and this process is called as a polymerization. So polymerization is the process of applying the heat, pressure and the catalyst to the monomers, and monomers are grown into long chains, and that is called as a polymerization process, or that is called as a whatever may be the material you are getting, that material is called as a polymer, and the process is called as a polymerization. So after polymerization is completed, The finished polymer chains resemble long intertwined bundles of spaghetti with no physical connection between the chains, and such polymers are also called as thermoplastic polymers. So these thermoplastic polymers, you can manufacture it with the help of polymerization, so you can form such kind of chains and you can have such kind of intertwined bundles, and that will form the thermoplastic polymers. So there are following non-exhaustive list of thermoplastics that are available. First one is the ABS, that is acrylonitrile butadiene styrene, which is a tough, hard and rigid type of material. And then acrylic, you are most familiar with this word because the acrylic material which is available. So the most of the signboards you are seeing on various shops are generally made up of this acrylic type of boards. So these are the these are having optical clarity, excellent resistance to the outdoor weathering, and hard and glossy material, and it looks good. That's why most of the artists, they are using the acrylic material. Then fluoroplastic, then nylon, you are familiar with this one. So nylon is the outstanding for its toughness. Outstanding toughness is there. It is wear resistance. So mostly for manufacturing ropes, such kind of nylons are used. Then polycarbonates are used for where the high impact resistance, because of its high impact resistance. Then polyester is the material. So you know, because you wear the polyester material as a cloth, so it is having external excellent dimensional stability. Polyethylene, it is a lightweight and inexpensive material you can use. Then polypropylene, you can use it for because of its outstanding resistance to the flex and stress cracking. Then polyurethane, you can use it because it is tough, extremely abrasion and impact resistance material. So these are the some thermoplastics which are generally utilized in many applications around our day-to-day life. So another type of plastic, it is also called as a thermoset, in which the polymerization is done in two stages, one by material manufacturer and other by the molder. So you can mold the plastic to have a desired shapes. So that is called as a thermoset type of plastic. So there are other thermoplastics are also available which are used in sensor related applications. The examples are alkyd, then epoxy is there, then phenolic is there, and polyester is there. So epoxy and polyester, these are the very famous materials that are used in your PCB also. So epoxy layer PCB, you might be knowing that is used as a, that is having a very good dielectricity, that is also used for manufacturing the antennas and other devices also. So for PCB, this epoxy type of material is generally used, or such kind of devices are also used in various applications for electronic sensor applications. Okay, so if the two different polymers, monomers are combined in a polymerization reaction, then such polymers are called as a copolymer. And the final property of the copolymer depends upon the ratio of A and B. So what kind of what amount of A and what amount of B is added. So depending on that, the characteristics of C is decided. So copolymers characteristics are decided by the ratio of A and B. So another good way to control the property of the plastic is to make the polymer alloy or a bend or the blends. So you can make the polymer alloys also, and from that also you can control the properties of the plastics. So there are two types of plastic. First one is the conductive plastic. So these are the plastics often materials or often require laminations with metal foil painting with a conductive paint and metallization to give them electrical conductivity properties required for the shielding. Another way to provide the electrical conductivity is mixing the plastic with the conductive additive itself and building the composite plastic part incorporating the metal mesh. So this is how you can use a conductive plastic which will give you the conductivity property. And piezoelectric plastics also are possible with the help of these materials. So piezoelectric material, it is made up of PV F2 type or PVDF or copolymers, which are crystalline materials, and the metal electrodes are deposited on both sides of the film, either by silk screening or vacuum metallization process, and you will be getting the piezoelectric plastic. So it is used instead of ceramic because the flexibility and stability against the mechanical stress, so that provides you the better stability as compared to ceramic materials. Okay, next are metals. So I'll just briefly give you the ideas. We know that the metals are having the properties. In previous lecture itself, when we studied the temperature sensors, in that temperature sensors itself, the metals are showing the PTC type of characteristics. So these metals, specifically the platinum, gold and silver type of metals, which are the precious metals, these metals are generally used in manufacturing the sensors. So we will go through a brief and fast view of these metals in a chart format, so you just try to understand it. So from the sensor designer point of view, the metals are in two types of metals we can classify it. One is ferrous and non-ferrous. So ferrous metals are generally used for magnetic applications, and non-ferrous are generally used for other purposes. So ferrous metals like steel are often used with a combination of magnetic sensors to measure the sensors, motion, distance and magnetic field, etc., etc. And non-ferrous metals on the other hand are permeable to the magnetic field and offers a wide variety of mechanical and electrical properties. So when selecting the while selecting the metal, the physical properties and the ease of mechanical processing you need to consider. So this aluminium, these are the metals: aluminium, beryllium, magnesium, nickel. So these are the metals, and these metals have their own properties which will give you the specific high strength to weight ratio, then electrical properties, resistance, then they may be very good for UV or X-rays type of materials, and depending on that they are used in various applications. So aluminum is widely used for the mirrors and waveguides. Beryllium is widely used in X-ray windows and optical platforms, mirrors and satellite structures. Magnesium is generally used in most of the metal working techniques. Nickel is generally used for high temperature super alloys, where you want to have a super alloys, then in that case nickel is preferred. Then next one is gold, silver, then palladium, iridium and rhodium type of metals. So gold, we are all know that it is very soft and very inert material. So you can, with 1 gram you can have a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter foil you can create. So soft material is there, and that material is having a very good conductivity. So it is generally used for a plating and alloying purpose with the help of copper, nickel and other type. Then it is used for a fabricating the electrical contacts, specifically mostly whenever you are manufacturing the ICs there, or when you are manufacturing the contacts between the two terminals or the N terminals. At that time the gold plated materials are generally preferred, or the gold materials are generally preferred. So the silver is again having the same kind of use of gold. Then palladium, iridium and rhodium also, it is having good properties like platinum, and you can use these instead of platinum for a fabrication of high quality reflectors in broad spectral range applications. Then you have molybdenum as a material. It contains its high strength, rigidity, and for a high temperature application devices you can use such kind of molybdenum type of material. Then the tungsten you are familiar with. So you used to have the bulbs at your home. So that bulbs you having tungsten wire inside that. So it can be used for the thermocouple sensors, or where the temperature is very high. In that case, such kind of tungsten wires are used. Then the zinc is the next material which can be used for alloyed purpose with the coating, for the coating with many additive materials. So I think we missed one. Here it is the copper, lead and platinum. So again, these are the very precious type of metals which can be used in various applications. So copper is used with its alloys called as a brass and bronze. So copper alloys with beryllium are generally used for spring making because of its mechanical strength. Then lead is used in many industrial applications. Then platinum is used for the temperature sensors, as we have seen that RTD type of sensor where the platinum is used. So these are the metal applications. Generally copper alloys, specifically bronze, comprise several main group, that is copper with a phosphorus. So that is called as a phosphorus bronze. Copper, tin, lead and phosphorus, that is called as the lead phosphorus bronze, and copper silicon, that is called as the silicon bronze. That means some alloys along with some other materials, if you combine it with the copper, then that is called as a bronze type of materials with a different properties. So these are used for various applications depending on the various properties as per the application. Okay. So next one is ceramic. So ceramic, it is in sensor technologies, ceramic are very useful crystalline material because of its structural strength, thermal stability, lightweight, resistance to many chemical, then ability to bond with other materials and excellent electrical properties. Ceramic are generally preferred in many applications. So if you are going to, I'll give the best example is capacitor. Ceramic capacitors are there. So that is the best example I can give you. The most metals form at least one chemical compound with oxygen. Only handful oxides are useful as a principal constituents of ceramics. So several metal carbides and nitrides that can be used as a ceramics, and the most commonly used are boron carbide and nitrate and aluminum nitride, which can be used as a ceramic material. So when a fast heat transfer is of importance, then aluminum nitride is considered, whereas the silicon carbide is having high dielectric constant, and which makes it attractive in designing the capacitive sensors. So you can see that when you require a heat transfer means we will be using it for thermal radiation, or we will be using it for temperature. Then in that case you will be using aluminum nitride, and if we want to design a capacitive type of sensor, we will be using silicon carbide type of ceramic material. So depending on application and depending on its characteristics, its application is decided. So due to their hardness, the most of the ceramic requires the special processing. So precise and cost effective method of cutting the various shapes of the ceramic substrate is scribing, machining and drilling by use of computer controlled CO2 laser. So carbon dioxide laser is there, that using that laser, CO2 laser, you will be cutting these ceramic materials into various shapes. So ceramic sensor substrate are available in the thickness of 0.1 to 10 mm. Okay. Now next material is the glass material. So we know that the glass is also one kind of combination which can be used for the application, or which can be used in designing the windows for various sensors. So we can see that the glass is an amorphous solid material made up of fusing silica with a basic oxide. So from silicon itself, from the silica is a oxide type of material of silicon type of material, then fuse it you will get with some basic oxide, if you mix it, you will get a transparent amorphous solid material which is known as a glass. So glass is characterized by transparency, availability in many colors, hardness, and resistance to most of the chemical except hydrofluoric acid. So why in chemical laboratories glass are preferred? Because it is resistant to most of the chemical except hydrofluoric acid. So you cannot use this glass material where you are using the hydrofluoric acids. So most of the glasses are based on silicate system and is made up of three major components: silica, lime, and sodium carbonate. So sodium carbonate, you can see its chemical composition: SiO, silica; lime, CaCO3, that is calcium carbonate, and sodium carbonate. So if I combine these three in proper way, I will be able to get the glass combinations. So non-silicate glasses include the phosphate glass, which resists the hydrofluoric acid. So whenever you are using the hydrofluoric acid, so you have to use non-silicate glasses. So heat absorbing glasses are also there, which is made up of FeO and ferrous oxide type of material. Then the system based on oxide of aluminum, vanadium, germanium, and other methods are also used for manufacturing the glasses. So specialty of glass is arsenic trisulfate, known as AmTIR, which is substantially transparent in mid and infrared spectral range, are generally used for fabricating infrared optical devices. So arsenic trisulfate, you can use it as a glass material for designing the mid and infrared spectral range optical devices. So with that, we came to the end of such kind of materials. We have seen a few materials. Apart from that, there are various materials, but our focus is on ceramic, metal, plastic, silicon, and glass type of material. So these 5 materials we have seen as a material that can be used for manufacturing the sensors, either as a window or for various application, for outer material, for covering material, or as a substrate also. So we can use such kind of materials for manufacturing the sensors. So if you have any query, you can post me. I'll be able to answer your queries. Thank you very much.